Of the innovative monitoring approaches available today, centralized monitoring appears to be the smarter approach to enhance data quality and ensure patient safety in a cost-effective manner. Even the regulators encourage use of centralized monitoring techniques for certain monitoring activities to complement traditional monitoring practices. The right understanding and implementation of a centralized monitoring approach is essential in maximizing benefits with regard to higher quality of study conduct, reporting, and better monitoring of patient safety with reduced number of on-site monitoring visits. The successful implementation of centralized monitoring requires effective planning, process restructuring, cross-functional expertise alignment, and the right technology in place. As the industry is looking into standardization and optimization for centralized monitoring process to create further efficiency in clinical trial management, this podcast organized by MakroCare will provide insight on the process and implementation of centralized monitoring and the opportunities offered through this approach. MakroCare takes pleasure in presenting Dr. Margaret, an eminent speaker and expert from the field, to share her views on this important topic. Margaret is a senior consultant and executive vice president of clinical research Facilitator. Earlier, she was a global director, clinical monitoring for Medtronic clinical operations. Margaret has been an advocate of innovation, worker protection, and risk mitigation. She also holds 2 patents related to process implementation of risk-based management system in trial conduct. So Margaret, welcome to this podcast on centralized monitoring.
Thank you.
Margaret, I have first question for you. Can you give us a brief idea about this centralized monitoring process and its importance in current practices?
Well, the purpose of any risk-based management or quality improvement program is obviously to actively identify and mitigate sources of risk by eliminating variability across all stages of a trial process. The goal is to prospectively identify and control potential issues that may be encountered through the trial process, and central monitoring of data is a critical component to that success and to provide critical oversight. When the FDA guidance was developed and initially drafted in 2011 and finally released as the final guidance document in 2013, it was done so with the purpose of assisting sponsors in developing a risk-based management strategy with plans for any investigational study, be they drug or device. The FDA suggests that on a regular on-site monitoring visit schema every 4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 8 weeks using 100% site data verification, it's no longer valid. And with the technological advances that we now see in our industry, it is now possible to centrally monitor data quality much more effectively and efficiently, opening the door to alternative methods for monitoring trial management. When we talk about central data review, analysis, and management of data, it is an actually intelligent monitoring solution. It improves efficiency and effectiveness and does so in a very cost-effective manner. Centralized statistical monitoring, or CSM as I prefer to refer to it, is actually performed at a location other than an investigational site. It is performed in near real time using a combination of electronic systems, expert cross-functional team oversight, statistical analysis, working with biostatisticians to examine data and to identify anomalies and trends. It concentrates team focus on operational management, subject safety, reliability of study results, and regulatory compliance. It's important to note centralized monitoring does not replace on-site monitoring. Rather, it supplements and directs resources according to risk indicators. In many cases, it can reduce the level and cost of on-site monitoring through the use of software programs, flag deviations or signal detection alerts, identify and generate out-of-threshold ranges for variances and anomalies, and do so on an individual site or across all sites. Using the right technology and statistical monitoring techniques, centralized monitoring can help identify higher-risk individual sites more quickly and more readily so that appropriate decision-making can occur and response be initiated.
Thank you, Margaret. What are the key steps one needs to take to ensure successful implementation of centralized monitoring approach?
You know, the most important aspect to this is written or was published in Research Practitioner in December a year ago. And we follow the Deming concept, and that is plan, do, check, act. Implementation is a multi-step process that has to begin before study startup. It requires a comprehensive review of risk indicators associated with the study population, the disease state, the protocol of itself with a history of investigational product development. It also requires that we look carefully at the sites selected. This is done by a cross-functional team who looks at all variables and endpoints that are patient-related and or related to the investigational product and the study site. Once risks have been identified, a weighted value is assigned and steps are taken to eliminate or mitigate risks. We tend to use the FMEA approach, but any type of risk hazard identifier and reduction methodology will work. Thresholds are established, giving an acceptable reference range, and then working with the IT department and data management, event triggers are assigned to each risk. The expected values determined, and from those values, metric measurements together with operational thresholds are established, and corrective actions based on that risk analysis are set into place. Both strategic and operational management plans have to be able to identify key risk indicators as well as key performance indicators before any of the additional plans, including the monitoring plans, are set. The risk-based management plans should clearly detail communication and the escalation process, the various tools that are going to be employed by monitoring, and the processes that will be used and actions taken along with the rationale behind what type of action is indicated. The focus should definitely be on preventing important and likely sources of error during study conduct, collection of data, and reporting of data.
Thank you. As the process is the key, designing the monitoring plan is the core of the process. Would you please comment on the requirement of centralized monitoring plan?
Yes, and this is critical. This is a critical aspect of the overall active site management and the operational component. For efficient and effective statistical monitoring implementation, there needs to be a well thought out, comprehensive monitoring plan. The expectation by regulators we found is that in the monitoring plan that it will be explained in detail what aspects of data monitoring will be achieved by central monitoring, by remote or office-based monitors, and what indicators will be used for targeted or specific on-site monitoring. Using statistical methods, metric indicators, monitoring can be achieved through central monitoring very effectively, and it can be better managed, and the risk can be compared centrally by a central monitor between sites. The outliers can be readily, quickly identified. And this allows rapid proactive detection of variances, and it allows management to take a look at resources and how they will be deployed based on risk. We found that it improves the overall quality of data. The plan has to outline responsibilities for central monitors, for on-site monitors, and for off-site or targeted monitoring. It should outline the procedure and timings for site contact and interaction, the rationale for why you conduct an on-site visit based on the critical issues that are identified. The monitoring plan should also help to increase the effectiveness of on-site CRAs. And we found that the greater amount of time the CRA spends with the site, the better the site response is. So it's relationship building as well. The plan will also define effective communication, escalation process, and coordination between the centralized monitoring team and different stakeholders to ensure timely response to events. Regulators, FDA in particular, expect very clear justification for the risk indicators chosen, the thresholds and performance metrics that are being tracked, and how it is monitored throughout the process. So documentation is a critical component of centralized monitoring. Monitoring plan also needs to state the technology that's going to be used to facilitate oversight and management, as well as how the documentation is going to be kept for the observations, activities, and communications that are performed during the process. This will include the frequency and extent of all monitoring visits, the role and responsibility of all members of a cross-functional team, and the tools employed to report observations and findings when actions are taken as new risks are identified.
Thank you, Margaret. Another question I have here, what is the importance of technology in centralized monitoring?
Without technology, none of this would be possible. And what we found is that if you employ validated tools and technologies to create and manage planned analytics, performance metric indicators, that you will readily be able to identify and respond to risk indicators as they arise in near real time or in real time. As centralized monitoring requires checking data remotely, it is only possible with the help of robust and cutting-edge technology. We can't use the Excel spreadsheets any longer. That's outmoded. The ability to use tools that aggregate large data sets is absolutely critical. It enables a more risk-adaptive monitoring approach across the life cycle of a trial. Simply collecting large amounts of data, however, doesn't mean that central monitors are going to be able to identify unfavorable trends, potential risks, or safety issues. They have to have unique skill set as well as critical thinking and knowledge of how to use that technology. In our current state, I think everyone will agree, the challenge for all of us is integrating data streams into reliable intelligence. It allows sponsors and CROs to make more informed and intelligent decisions. Today, we see data coming from a wide range of platforms, whether it's Oracle Clinical, CTMS, Excel spreadsheets, home-built programs, electronic health records, IRT, e-diaries, or central laboratory data. All of these appear in different platforms. How well disparate data can be leveraged to make the right data available in a user-friendly version to support planning and operational delivery is going to be the key to success. It's therefore necessary to have the right technology in place that can integrate the different sources of data, handle large data volume to allow appropriate analysis. The technology should be able to identify trends, patterns, outliers at a study or at a program level. And more importantly, having the experience globally, it is important also to be able to determine variances by site and by country or geographic region. For the reporting and visualization perspective, the technology should also provide graphical and visual representation that can easily, quickly identify risks or issues.
Thank you. From the monitoring perspective, how would you describe the role of a central monitor in centralized monitoring?
It's a good question. As industry moves toward risk-based trial management, there is an obvious shift in the role and responsibility of clinical trial monitors. We need new skills to ensure that individuals reviewing data have the right expertise and the trained resources in place so that they're able to see, interpret, and respond appropriately to risks or issues related to clinical trial operations and data quality. This really is a paradigm shift to central statistical monitoring, and it means that central monitors will spend a considerable amount of time monitoring data remotely, reviewing reports, identifying risks, following metric indicators at individual sites and across sites, planning responsive actions, and also communicating with various members of the team. A good central monitor is going to have a strong foundation and knowledge of regulatory requirements globally. They're going to have a thorough understanding of the study protocol, the therapeutic indication. They're going to understand they're going to also understand the investigational product. They're going to need past experience in monitoring or in auditing and good clinical knowledge of data management activities so that they are technologically savvy in being able to work with the data. Of equal importance are analytic skills and the ability to apply critical thinking to identify the trends and the variances or outliers or anomalies that they find when data comes in and it's out of reference range. It's important that those risks that are related to data quality and patient safety become primary focus for them. They must also be a team player because a central monitor needs to interface and interact on an ongoing basis with medical reviewers, with all members of the clinical operational team, data management personnel, biostatisticians, IT, and safety personnel.
Thank you, Margaret. Another question I have here, how do you see the adoption of centralized monitoring in near future by the industry?
I think we all agree that as the cost of running a clinical trial continues to rise and trials have become far more complex, regulations at the same time have increased, sponsors have found the current state untenable. Something had to change because looking at data over a 10-year period, we realize that any of the steps that have been taken to improve monitoring have not improved overall quality. Traditional methodologies have proven to be ineffective, inefficient, and without evidence of any type of quality improvement. As a result, the pharmaceutical industry, the medical device industry, and all of biotechnology have adopted in its early phase or started to use some form of centralized statistical monitoring as part of an overall risk-based approach to trial conduct. With an appropriate system in place, processes and trained resources, I believe that sponsors are going to find that centralized statistical monitoring serves to increase overall quality, decrease trial delays, improve site relationships through more focused central site support. I think also that central monitors are going to be able to proactively identify potential performance issues far more quickly. And as such, site engagement will improve as milestones are met, protocol will be executed correctly, problems prevented, resulting in more effective patient care and more valid study results. Excuse me. With 2 years of beta testing using centralized monitoring and a risk-based approach to trial conduct, I personally have found that sponsor adoption of the risk-based management process is welcome, provided there's buy-in by the stakeholders. It is clear the monitoring metrics related to quality, safety, timelines, and budget are able to actually confirm the benefits and potential of centralized monitoring approach to risk mitigation and management. I personally know that we were able to take a pivotal trial and close it well ahead of targeted deadline using a risk-based approach to trial conduct. And as to the future, I think as we all gain experience with statistical monitoring model, improvements are obviously going to follow across industry as our industry as a whole gains experience in developing processes, resources, and technologies to ensure better outcomes. And as regulatory authorities become more comfortable with the technology, I think there will be global adoption.
Thank you. Thank you, Margaret, for your insightful opinion on this important topic on centralized monitoring. MakroCare appreciate your time today for this discussion. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good day.